Hello, everybody. Welcome along to the Premier League Check-In podcast. We are here each and every Tuesday with Matt SB, and we're going to talk about two kind of disparate ends of the Premier League table in respects of EFL teams involved in both ends. Matt, I'll bang through the results, and we will not stand on ceremony and get straight into Matt's moment. It was Newcastle 1, Arsenal 0. Arsenal down to 4, interestingly. Bournemouth 2, Man City 1. Take about Bournemouth, one of our ex-EFL boys. Ipswich 1, Leicester 1. Liverpool 2, Brighton 1. Forest 3, West Ham 0. Forest do it again. Southampton 1, Everton 0. A first win for the Saints. Wolves 2, Palace 2 in the other battle of the bottom 6 games. First 4, Villa 1, Man United 1, Chelsea 1, and in the Monday night football, a West London derby between Fulham and Brentford ended with a late win for Fulham. They took it 2-1, and we're about to head to Matt's moment. So we need to put our oxygen masks on here, Matt, because we're heading further up the table than we normally do. Welcome, fella. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. We're trying something a little bit different today, aren't we? So if you've not seen my and Ben's channels before on YouTube, we are championship enthusiasts, but of course we like following Premier League, League One, and seeing where those championship teams that were there get to. And it usually gets to just the fight for survival in the Premier League. But if we flash up the top end of the Premier League table, and we're not talking about the title race, we're talking about the race for Europe, because Nottingham Forest are third, Aston Villa are sixth, Brighton are eighth, Fulham are ninth, Bournemouth are 10th, and Newcastle are 11th. Now, I know Newcastle and Villa, we've expected to be up there over the last couple of seasons. They've qualified for the Champions League, of course. But all of those teams I mentioned have been in the Championship within the last 6-7 years or so. And yeah, I mean, let us know down below in the comments, guys. Is this something you'd like to see as a regular feature, by the way, us looking at the race for Europe? Because in particular, I know we've spoken about them a lot, Ben, but Nottingham Forest have now found their way up to third. I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
Matt, can I just chime in? Because obviously, Matt and I, we think about this a lot. We really care about the content. And each weekend, we'll text each other and we'll leave each other voice notes of planning out what we're going to do. And there's been about 4 of them now when we've gone, right, we must talk about Forest now in case it drops off. And yet they keep winning. Now they're third, Matt.
I know. I'm running out of words to describe this for the Nottingham Forest fans. They're just living a dream, aren't they? I mean, it is genuinely incredible because I suppose after 3 or 4 games, anyone could have a really good start. You know, a team that might actually go on to get relegated might win their first 2 or 3 games. But no, I think we can say at this point we've made it to the 10-game mark. And although some people will say that's still early in the season, which is true, we're past a quarter of the way through the season now. And I'm not even going to mention Forest having to look over their shoulder at all now, because we've said with the relegation battle 35 points to stay up. They're already halfway past that. They've got 55% of that already with 19 points on the board. And you look at the teams they're ahead of here. I mean, Chelsea and Arsenal are right next to each other. They play each other at the weekend. But look how close this is. Nottingham Forest third with 19 points. Newcastle 11th with 15 points. They actually play each other at the weekend. And in between that, you got Bournemouth, who we need to talk about with their great wins against Arsenal and Man City recently, and a draw against Villa, of course, which is incredible. Fulham just won dramatically against Brentford, of course. Fulham are flying. Brighton are still up there again. Let's maybe start with Forest, Fulham and Bournemouth, Ben, because they all came up in that same season, the 21-22 season.
22, yeah.
That's it, yeah. And one thing since then that we've seen is the 3 that came up the following season went back down. The 3 that have come up this season from the Championship are really battling to stay up. These 3 have really kicked on. So full credit to Fulham, Bournemouth and Forest. And I think we can say they are in this equation.
And what interests me about this angle of the class of 22 is the kind of different ways that they've all done it. Because I think the Fulham fans would acknowledge they kept course. They had a 90 million quid wage bill and kept a Premier League team in the Championship, didn't they? And scored 100 goals and scored 6 about 8 times during the season. So they took that approach. obviously Bournemouth were in year 2 of the parachute payments, which is where things get a bit nervous, and they back Scott Parker in January after an experiment with Jason Tindall. But Bournemouth have built their Premier League machine in the Premier League, which is pretty encouraging for Ipswich and Leicester and Southampton, as if to say it's not all about like being a Fulham and bringing up, Mitrovic and Wilson and Carvalho, whoever the stars were when they came up. So I'm sure Fulham fans will say, "Oh, but they did recruit well after that," and that would also be true. And then Forest have just done it a totally different way, where they had half a team that was on loan and came out of nowhere down the bottom of the league after 7 games, and just literally had to throw the kitchen sink and all Mr. Marianakis's various revenue streams at keeping them up. So it fascinates me that they've all done it a different way. And what really fascinates me is it's the team that won the playoffs that year that are actually burgeoning now in 3rd place in Forest, Matt.
Yeah, and for the last 2 seasons in the Premier League, I think they finished below Fulham and Bournemouth. Obviously, they've all stayed up in those seasons, but this is a season where Forest have shot up on the graph, and they suddenly look like the best performing out of those 3. I will quickly just go back to Bournemouth and say you're absolutely right about how they're building this team, because the fact that they lost Solanke, that to me would have been... it could have been a disaster, could have been a catastrophe. You think of the goals he puts up, but no, they're so well run, and the team is just like such a well-oiled machine that they are, like I say, beating Man City and Arsenal and drawing with Villa in the space of 3 games, which is incredible. Fulham, I mean, credit to them for that dramatic win against Brentford last night. We'll obviously come on to one of their goals later in Worldie of the Week. Wilson, of course, a player we saw in the Championship. But Forest, I mean, I must say, as Championship enthusiasts, I think we are both big fans of Steve Cooper and his work. And when he was replaced with Nuno, I was never against it, but I was a bit like, it's a shame. I loved the story of Cooper and Forest, but you've got to say it's been a masterstroke. I mean, Nuno is really building them up, and something you've got to look at here is Nuno got Wolves into the top 7 of the Premier League in back-to-back seasons.
Yeah,
so
2 or 3 times in a row, Matt, wasn't it? Yeah.
Exactly. So what's to say you can't take Forest there? I mean, they absolutely took West Ham to the cleaners at the weekend. I mean, we literally know what to expect as well, but teams can't stop them. We said Chris Wood, he'll move around in the box, find the space, get the goal. Callum Hudson-Odoi, I think there was a little touch on his goal, but you know what he's going to do? He's going to cut in and bend it. And then the Aina goal was absolutely sensational. I think it's their biggest win in the Premier League since they've been back. It's got to be up there. I'm trying to work out if they've won a game 3-0. So fair play to Forest, 3rd place. If they beat Newcastle at the weekend, then they are stamping their authority, and Fulham and Bournemouth both not far behind them.
Yeah, and if I can just round out before we talk about sort of Villa and Newcastle and Brighton, just Bournemouth, great point about Solanke, and now the lad Evan Nilsson is scoring. And we always talk about all the star players, all the amazing players are going to end up at, the big 6 clubs. And you've got to build stars. And I'm looking at it, and Kirkes, the fullback, is 20, and he looks fantastic. Zabarnyi, the centre-back, is 22. Semenyo, who you and I know all about from covering him for Bristol City in the Championship, is still 24. So they're building stars as well, and they're fishing in ponds where before Bournemouth always used to seem to sign people like Solanke, who'd been, I don't know, like what Ipswich are doing at the moment, where you take young graduates from what you call the big clubs. And they've just done a great job of pivoting and going a different way, haven't they, Matt? Let's just round this out, because you talk about the class of 22. We can't necessarily link these teams. I mean, we can link Newcastle and Brighton. I mean, we'll give Brighton a bit of a wide berth because, they're so often talked about in terms of being the kind of, the blueprint really for development in the Premier League. But they came up with Newcastle, didn't they? And with Villa as well, there's always this sense of, Villa and Newcastle are too big for the Championship anyway. Naturally, gravity will pull them out of the Championship and back into the Premier League in the end, whatever happens. But then different kind of journeys in the Premier League. And as much as I'm loving the Forest, Fulham and Bournemouth conversation, is it Villa and Newcastle that are going to be the ones that just edge their way up ahead of those other teams when we get to the end of the season?
I suppose so, because they've been in the Premier League that bit longer. I guess they've built their teams up. They've played in the Champions League as well. I mean, Villa, of course, are currently playing in the Champions League. I must say, last weekend I was a bit surprised that they went down so heavily to Tottenham, because they've been so good. But maybe that's just one result, and they have been juggling a lot. You know, the Champions League is different this season, with the competition fitting in more games, so it must be taking it out of Villa.
I think they're top, aren't they, Villa? Are they top of the whole ladder, I think?
They're currently top of the Champions League table, yeah, it's incredible. And then they're sixth in the Premier League, which is still impressive at the same time, and that's only 1 point behind third place. So very good from Villa. They've been that good. I think you can afford one defeat to Tottenham in that manner, but now they need to get back to winning ways. And then, like you say, Newcastle, a golden opportunity this season, because they're not in any European competition. I think they finished. Did they finish 7th or 8th last year? And then I think they missed out on European football because Manchester United won the FA Cup. Might have worked to their advantage for them to go full steam ahead for 4th or 5th place this time round. Great win, by the way, against Arsenal. What a win. I mean, I know people might be quick to say Arsenal haven't been great recently, but Arsenal are going to be desperate to get back to winning ways. So it's really hard to stop them when they're going to be that desperate. And then you look at this block of teams here, Ben. Chelsea play Arsenal next, and they're not both going to be able to win. That gives Villa, Brighton, Fulham an opportunity to jump even higher up this table. Tottenham are also in the middle of this European sandwich, should we call it? Tottenham with a great win. Like we said, they just beat Villa, of course. So very close, very close between 3rd and 11th. And I wouldn't be surprised if soon we maybe get Manchester United latching onto this ladder of teams. There's very little to separate them, Ben.
Right, we'll clip that out and we'll put that on Matt's channel. But challenge for you guys in the comments. I have got 6 ex-EFL teams, easy for me to say, and I need you guys in the comments to put them in order. Okay, so we've got Forest, Villa, Brighton, Fulham, Bournemouth and Newcastle. That's the current order from top to bottom at the moment. Get in the comments and let us know how many of our EFL alumni can reach the kind of top 8 or even higher. And yeah, I know we talked about them a lot, but Forest ain't going away, are they, in terms of top 6, top 8? Get involved in the comments on Matt and his European sandwich. So juvenile. The European sandwich gets me every time, doesn't it? It's the relegation sandwich. That's a callback to the excellent League One predictions video that Matt and I collaborate on that you should very much watch. Worldie of the week, Matt. I'm going to mention the Leif Davis goal, even though it didn't get Ipswich the first win, but we'll talk about that in the relegation sandwich section. Bit of a vintage week, this one. I've got Kadilogu for Brighton, who squeezed that one in the corner. Beauty up at Anfield. You've already mentioned Aina for Forest. I don't know which of the Spurs goals to go for, because we've seen Maddison whop a free kick in many times. I love Solanke's dink and the speed of the move vertically right through. Caicedo's goal I liked, but in terms of uniqueness, once I'd watched a couple of replays, what about Harry Wilson for Fulham last night with the spinning bird kick for any 90s Street Fighter Nintendo players there? What's your take on Worldie of the Week?
Yeah, no, spoilt for choice this week. I think last week we said it wasn't quite the vintage week. I think this one definitely is. Sometimes you get them all in one go. I was prepared to text you last night and say, I think Leif Davis has won it for me. I'm sorry to say Harry Wilson stole it at the death there. And the fact he got 2 goals as well, we'll give him an honourable mention for winning that game for Fulham. Incredible stuff. But that first goal, I mean, like I say, with the Leif Davis goal, what it is for me about that one is it's a volley. But Harry Wilson's goal is also a volley, but it's the back of his boot. I don't know how he's done that. What do you call it? A scorpion goal, I guess. Incredible finish to loop it over the keeper in the dying seconds as well. It's easy to...
He's aiming for that far post as well, isn't he? I'm sure in his head he's not perfectly looping it over, but he's definitely... It's not a fluke, is it?
No, but yeah, I was going to say, with it being the last minute, it's very easy to think it's not worth trying that. Just try and bring it down and smash it or something. But what a goal! And maybe it was the best way to unlock Brentford's defence towards the end. Very, very good goal from Harry Wilson. I think that is going to win it for me. But like you say, there were so many this week, and I was so close to giving it to Leif Davis. I really do enjoy that goal, so I'll give that second place.
There we go. Second place, a familiar place for Ipswich this season in the majority. No, not the majority of their games. What are we, 5 for 5? But anyway, we're about to talk about that. But get your thoughts on Worldie of the Week. I think we are both going for Harry Wilson and Fulham. Okay, Matt, let's take it to the bottom of the table. And we bigged this weekend up, hadn't we, as the bottom six all playing against each other. And I think the subtitle is, and then there were two, because Wolves and Ipswich are still without a win, and they both led. But let's talk about Southampton first. I know we've been fairly high on Everton, but in the very, very short term, and I probably won't be saying this in a few weeks, they have kind of pulled Everton back into it a little bit. They're beneath the point per game mark now, but that's not the story. It's a big well played to Southampton. And what I'm learning, Matt, for these promoted teams is everything has to be on point for you to win a game in the Premier League. And the keeper played well. A couple of perhaps poor misses from Everton where they should have scored. Little bit of luck maybe on a real tight VAR call, but well played Southampton to get that win and hang in there. And when everything is there for you, you've got to take the chance. And as we talk about Ipswich in a minute, couldn't do it. Southampton could.
Yeah, no, really, really happy for the Southampton fans, actually, because it's felt like for a lot of weeks they have been the biggest losers. With what happened against Leicester, what happened against Ipswich, and they had to be patient and wait last week. When you've got Man City away, there's not much you could do other than hope the results go your way elsewhere. So they came into this week, knowing that everyone's jostling for points down at the bottom, and it's kind of gone the perfect way for the Southampton fans in terms of they would and everyone else drew. So they've made up 2 points on everyone else down there. And to be honest, I feel like they deserve maybe a bit of luck with, like you say, a tight decision, whether it is the right decision or not. I think Southampton have been very unfortunate. I saw that Everton scored right at the end, and I was like, oh, God, those poor Southampton fans. Really pleased for Southampton. Really, really pleased. And all of a sudden, it feels like they got a fighting chance. Ben, I must say, Wolves v Southampton at the weekend, that is a big one. If Southampton win that really changes things. It really does change things. I think I personally make Wolves slight favourites without giving my predictions away just yet. But if Southampton go and win that, goodness me, that really opens things up.
Especially going into an international break. Whack, bang, bang. And we did see Leicester earlier in the season do back-to-back wins. And we say it only half jokingly. That buys you like a month of breathing space, even longer maybe, the old back-to-back win. So, yeah, well played, Southampton. I just got the graphic up here. It looks like they've gone as well back towards that shape that we saw them go to for the playoffs last season. So poor old Russ Martin gets a load of grief from people, some of it reasonable, some of it unreasonable, but he is seemingly willing to, try different things out, even if his messaging sometimes suggests that he's not. You already mentioned Wolves Palace, which ended 2-2, and Wolves did lead in that one and just can't get the win over the line. And I guess the worry is, Matt, that you said a few weeks ago, and I agree with you actually, okay, difficult run of fixtures over. Now, can they go and get some points? And, it started with, surrendering a lead and not being able to beat Palace. And yeah, you're right. Whatever we say about this past game, must wins and all of those cliches, have got to beat Southampton next Saturday, haven't they?
Yeah, I know we probably say this every week, but it feels like it has to be a win for Wolves. It just has to be a win for Wolves. A draw is a defeat, in my opinion, for Wolves here. It has to be a win because, they had that really difficult run. And then I suppose right at the end of that difficult run, they popped up and got a draw when we least expected it against Brighton. And that was like, oh, okay. but you still thought they need to try and get maximum points against Palace. It was a seesaw game. I know they went behind and then they went ahead and then they technically went behind and the last goal was disallowed. Certainly better than losing because Palace could have really moved ahead, but at least they've halted Palace from progressing any further. And you can maybe look at it as 2 games unbeaten, which it is, but it has to be a win now. It has to be a win. I think we're going to say that draws will kill you down at the bottom because, I mean, some draws could be good, of course. Ipswich had a good few draws, but if you're not adding wins onto the draws, you're not really moving anywhere. So it has to be a win. It's such a massive game at the weekend. There was positives to take from the Palace game, but it's the same old things I'm going to say for Wolves. I think they've got goals in them. I just think they look a bit fragile at the back.
Yeah, 27 conceded now. I'm going to take your point about draws and raise it. Draws in home games will absolutely kill you now because at the end of this weekend, even though sort of Leicester, who we'll talk about in a second, Palace haven't won, they've not lost an away game against the team who's in the sandwich with them at the moment. And now there's the home game left to play where, you can, if it's tight, that advantage can mean a lot. Look, I hosted the Blue Monday podcast. It was a pretty difficult one because everyone was just gutted with the Ipswich Leicester, the way it panned out. And I'm not being deluded in a happy clapper. There was so much to be positive about up to minute 78 for Ipswich. Brilliant goal by Leif Davis. And Joe made this point on the podcast. Check that out over at the Blue Monday channel, by the way, that last season, Ipswich were seen as, light years behind Leicester, rightly so, with 8 years or whatever it was in the Premier League, won the damn thing, won the FA Cup, and Ipswich just come up from League One. And now they do feel like they're on a far more even footing. And when you see that game in the majority of the first, no, that's not fair to Leicester. Leicester were really good for the first 15, 20 minutes, and then Ipswich took it on through to minute 78. And I'm not going to moan about refereeing. It's just a difficult one to take because obviously the penalty call that, I've had my say on Blue Monday, but anyone can have their say. Could well have been a penalty is the way I'll leave it. And then immediately after, it all gets a bit emotional and Calvin Phillips then immediately gets red carded and Steve Cooper's like, this game I thought we were going to lose, we can get something out of. So I do think there's positives, Matt, but yeah, just gutting to not get it over the line and get the win for Ipswich.
Yeah, and just how I say, Southampton were the big winners this weekend. It feels like Ipswich were the big losers. I know Everton lost and Ipswich didn't lose, but the context is that Everton have won games. They were away. Ipswich haven't won. They were at home. They were leading going into the last minute. And it's happened in 2 games now. The Brentford game you conceded so late. If you add the 3 points on, 2 points for the Leicester game and a point for the Brentford game, you go zipping up the table. Every point, as we say in the Premier League, down at the bottom is absolutely precious. Yeah, it's hard, mate. It really is hard because we're trying to. I think there is still reasons to be positive. I agree with you. Let's not all be doom and gloom because it doesn't really help things move forwards. But the reality is, it's difficult. And you look at the upcoming game now, Tottenham away. Really tough.
And then Matt as well, Man United at home after the international break is going to be an absolute circus with Ruben Amorim having his first game. So that's going to be, I don't know if it can possibly work in Ipswich's favour, but yeah, difficult one.
Yeah, no, it possibly could. I agree. It possibly could. It might not, but it possibly could. Manchester United are really unpredictable. I think Ipswich having the home advantage. I still maintain, without any home wins though, that your home form will be what will save you if you stay up. The home wins will come. You're not going to go the whole season without winning. But it is just, you're reaching international break 3 without the win. You've got to still scrape the positives. I know you won't be pleased losing to Spurs, but say if in this weekend the other results go really nicely for Ipswich, and I'm talking Southampton and Wolves drawing, Palace losing, do you know what I mean? You could still try and scrape the positives where things could have got worse, but they didn't. But it's frustrating, isn't it? You can only do that for so long where you think, I'm kidding myself. They've got to get results. So, Yeah, no, I just got sympathy, I suppose, because they have become the big losers with the 2 late goals in the last 2 games. So I think performance-wise, you can still take the positives. As for Leicester, I'll give them a mention. This is what Steve Cooper's best at. I think, in that game, he smelt blood, didn't he? Like you say, with the red card, and he thought, let's go for the throat. Similar to how Leicester did it at Southampton, because Southampton went down to 10, and Leicester really went for the throat right at the end, and they managed to snatch all 3 points in that one. Yeah, I suppose you live and you learn in the Premier League, but you've got to learn pretty soon, I guess.
You really, really do. And I think one thing we do know that you've pointed out, Matt, is that red cards and conceding every single week and late goals, they're not good signs. But if they can be removed, maybe we can be a bit more positive. But we did mention the doomsday scenario, didn't we, of all the higher teams getting a win? None of them did. So everything's, for now, still fairly well congested, and we're not talking about 1 or 2 or 3, God forbid, being completely adrift from everybody else. Get your thoughts in on the bottom of the table and the relegation matter. As you can see, I've had just about enough of talking about that this weekend.
Oh, God.
Right, let's check out the mouthwatering matchup. So if you head to the community tab, you can go and vote. Matt, you can give me your choice now. Wolves v Southampton, only the 13%, but for relegation sandwich aficionados, we love that one, don't we? Liverpool Villa has got 20%. Forest Newcastle, 29%, but out in front with 38%, Matt. Chelsea versus Arsenal. Have you got a pick from those 4?
If it's up to me, I'd probably actually go for Wolves Southampton.
Yeah,
I knew you would. I mentioned it earlier. It just feels really, really fascinating down at the bottom. I didn't mention in the last segment that we just did that I do think we're looking at 6. I think we're looking at 6 this season. That's 6 that's currently down there. I know we might have a point where one moves away and one might fall down, but whenever any of these bottom 6 play each other, it's going to be really huge. And given that it's the current bottom 2, it feels absolutely massive. So yeah, looking forward to that. It feels like a win would be absolutely huge for both. And then we had Liverpool Villa. That's an interesting one. Of course, both playing in the Champions League this week. Villa travelling across to Club Brugge and then back up to Anfield after just going away to Tottenham. There's quite a lot of travelling for Villa, I must say. Forest Newcastle. Forest got the home advantage. They're moving like a train.
Chris Wood with a big point to prove there, Matt. Yeah, we're on the same page there, matey.
He got the hat trick at Newcastle.
Of course he did. Yeah. Okay, point already proved by Chris Wood. Yeah.
He's going to sort of put another nail in the Newcastle coffin, maybe. But that was New Year's. No, was it Boxing Day? I think it was Boxing Day last season.
Do you think he could be Football of the Year, Chris Wood, if he scores 25 goals? Wouldn't that be magnificent?
Yeah, keeping up with Haaland, which would be great to see. And then what was it? Of course, Arsenal-Chelsea. And Chelsea-Arsenal, I must say. All of a sudden, it feels huge. If you'd asked me about this game last season, I'd have thought Arsenal should get this done.
Yeah.
But Chelsea have looked a different animal under Maresca, and Arsenal are on a poor run. Chelsea come into this higher than Arsenal.
There you go. Get involved in the comments and get voting in the community tab there on the mouth-watering match up poll. Thank you for joining us as ever for the Premier League check-in. Get your views in on all things Europe and the EFL teams getting in there, and certain EFL teams trying to stay in the division as well. Matt, we will see, or you will see me over on Matt's channel if you're watching now on the Benjamin Bloom Football channel on the League One predictions video. What else can we find over on the Matt SB channel?
More Premier League content and more Championship content. I know we've got an international break coming up. Ben knows that's not my favourite thing. We have got to a point, though, where I have thought there has been a lot of football. So this is the first time I've felt this season I'm happy with a little break from it. But we've got so much content when we return. I try and get involved with the Carabao Cup, the Champions League. I'm spreading myself across everything. And like I say, you will see a bit of Benjamin Bloom on the Matt SB channel. So do check it out.
What more could you ask for? And we will see you next Tuesday, and we'll try and fathom a way of kind of taking stock in the middle of the international break as well for some more Premier League check-in action.